6 years ago, I got asked to speak at Starbucks in Seattle at the HQ in front of a group of executive women. I live in Seattle, by the way. I was at the darkest point in my life, and I shouldn't have been speaking. I told the whole entire audience that I was on drugs and in therapy, and I had no idea what I was doing. But I didn't stop there. I actually said next, oh, I just cut a payroll to my staff, and I have no idea how I'm going to cover it. Never told anybody that before. I couldn't believe I said that. At the end of my talk, I went backstage and I called my husband and I said, you won't believe what I just did. I told all of these women at Starbucks that I can't cover my payroll. And he's like, you did what? I came back out and I was in shock because there was a line of people waiting to thank me for standing on a stage and just being real. They're like, we don't talk that way around here. Thank you for doing that from the stage. Okay, let's see if I know how to work this thing. I grew up on a strawberry farm. I've always been a young entrepreneur. This is my first business. I sold Kool-Aid to the strawberry pickers when I was 8. That's not me in the picture, that's my cousin and my best friend that I hired to work for me the next day. When I was 18, I opened up a furniture store, signed a 5-year lease, hired people. That was my university. Being known, I've always been patted on the back as a young entrepreneur. I got 40 under 40. I started the Crave company when I was in my 30s, bringing women entrepreneurs together. I'm going to rewind, though, and tell you about my rock bottom moment. And it happened to be here in Amsterdam. Am I going the right way? I'm going the wrong way. Upside down. Okay, back. We've been traveling here, my husband and I, for the last 15 years to Amsterdam, and the minute I stepped foot out of Central Station, I fell in love, as a lot of you do. And I was determined to make it back here and start doing business here. But it took about 7 or 8 years of my life to carve out a lifestyle for me to come over here and start doing business here. And when I finally got here, I was so excited, and I started a business called Crave Amsterdam and featured women all over the city doing cool things in a book. And we had a big book launch party, and 300 Dutch entrepreneurs came. I was very excited. I was in 20 other cities around the world, but Amsterdam was I was just so proud of doing that. And so I rented the loft of my dreams. This is the loft. It was 3,000 square feet. And I was on top of the world. I was here for about a month, and I had no idea that I'd get a couple phone calls that would put me down to my knees in a couple weeks. I was having dinner parties. Let's see, I'll show you a picture of the books. I should hold this thing. I wrote a book called Craving Success about my top 10 lessons learned about what to do or what not to do, about the 20 businesses I've had in 30 years. These are the Crave books I had in 20 different cities. I was just living, it was a magical time in my life. And then I got 2 phone calls. The first one was from my printer that was printing the books. And he said, Melody, you've always been my best customer, but you're 90 days late and you owe me $60,000. What happened? I didn't even know it was late. He wanted me to come and see him in Seattle the next day. I'm like, I didn't want to tell him I'm in Amsterdam. Put him off. Then the next call came a few hours later, and it was my friend that was helping me run the company in America while I was here. And she goes, are you sitting down? I'm like, no. She goes, one of your East Coast partners has totally ripped off your brand. She's a graphic designer, and she's put your whole entire brand up and put her PayPal account in charge 3 times more money than what you're charging, and there's over 100 women entrepreneurs in that city that think they paid you and that you're going to produce a book for them. And between those 2 phone calls, it's not the worst thing I had in my life, but I wasn't prepared for that because I was in such a magical moment. I did not know my business wasn't working, and I just dropped to my knees and I went into a fetal position and I just started shaking. My husband could not even help me. I just said, go buy me a magazine and rub my feet. I didn't even tell him what happened for about 6 weeks. I was just so devastated. We came back to Seattle, and I pretty much just crawled in bed for the next year. I lost it. Halfway through the year, I turned fucking 50. Oprah says those are the best years of your life, and I wasn't having it. So a little bit of advice for all of you that are not 50 yet. When you're cruising into 50, make sure you're going on an upward spiral. It's no fun. I mean, I had lost everything, and now I'm starting over. And the worst part for me was I knew that I couldn't just go like bankrupt. I owed women entrepreneurs all over the world money. I couldn't screw them over, and it was going to take me the next 5 years of my life to dig out of that hole. So for the next 5 years, it's really depressing to think that I have to come up with really brilliant things, and I got to be really brilliant because I'm not willing to work for the man. And everything I would come up with is just going to go to pay for the past. And in 5 years from now, I'm going to be at 0. That sucks. I forgot who I was. I forgot everything about who I was, which is ironic because a few years earlier, I made a list called 100 Things You Crave. I dug deep on who I was. I figured out who I was, and it was about all the little things in life. About dinner parties, exploring Amsterdam with my husband, and having a day, which I really want right now, where there's nothing scheduled. Bringing business ideas to life, mind mapping, mentoring, journaling, karaoke with my girlfriends. These are all things that made me who I was. And I knew who I was. I wear this Fitbit, and I'm obsessed with walking 10,000 steps a day. I took this crave list, and I put it in an Excel document, and I literally tracked, like my Fitbit, that I was living my life in my craves 100% of my time. But I forgot all of it. And I just crawled into bed. Now, I did have to work from bed because I was in 20 cities, and my assistant quit on my birthday also. Just kept getting better. And so I had some friends. Talk about friends. Carrie. Where's Carrie? Anyway, friends are the best. They got me out of bed, and they said, Melody, what do you love? You got to get your mojo back. So I dug through my crave list, and I said, oh yeah, here's who I am. I love Flashdance and marshmallows. I said that very flippantly. I do, and I'm like, could I actually do an event with like a dance party and a s'more fest? People might come to that. So I threw in some TED Talk action, and I called it Urban Campfire. And I had my a reason to get out of bed. You know, I'm sure a lot of you can understand when you're stuck and you have nothing to look forward to, that's what makes us depressed, and that's what puts us in bed. But so this Urban Campfire was my baby steps out of bed. I made up this idea, love mashing things together, and so what if we did this? And I just started getting out of bed and taking one day at a time, 24 hours at a time. And I said, what if I could get women to come to this crazy thing? And 500 women came. I had 9 thought leaders stand on a stage very similar to this and tell their stories. Pretty soon I had 500 women crying, and I started group therapy. I had no idea what I was doing. I'm like, I am not prepared for group therapy. But I went on to do this for the next 3 years. I had urban campfire dinner parties in several cities. And what I learned, I always knew my friends had stories. I knew what my friends' stories were, but I didn't know all of your stories. And I heard from hundreds of women what their stories were. And I learned that you all look really cute. You got great hair, great shoes, great handbags. But guess what? If we take one layer of everybody off in this room, I don't even know how you're getting up in the morning. I really don't. I do not know how the world is surviving. So it's the good and the bad. It's good and bad. It was so inspiring to me, even though I heard all these crazy stories from people and I didn't know. Way worse stories than I've ever experienced. What's amazing to me is how people keep getting up and they keep going. And the resilience that people have is what inspires me. Back to Amsterdam. After 5 years, my husband and I were going for a walk, and he said, hey, it's my big birthday coming up. I think I want to go back to Amsterdam. I'm like, oh, you should see me jumping around in the middle of the street. We're going back. This time, it was in my friend Christina here's spare bedroom. That's okay. We got back here, and we scheduled a trip back. It was so exciting to be back here. After 5 years, we were just wandering around the city and had just had fresh eyes on everything. It was so amazing. I just reconnected with the community that we started 5 years earlier, and we were just like back. And on the way home, I saw an ad for a Women in Tech Summit happening here, European Women in Tech Summit. And I'm like, telling my husband, we're going to stay one more day, I got to go to that. I was just like, I'm just scratching for ideas. And that summit was sponsored by Microsoft and Amazon. And I'm like, what? And I'm on the board of for the last 6 years, I've been on the board of a nonprofit in Seattle called WIT, Women in Tech. And I flew back home and said, Europe has this big Women in Tech Summit, and we are living in the mothership. We're living in Amazon land. We have 1,500 people moving to Seattle a week. Why don't we have the largest Women in Tech Summit here in Seattle? We need to be the next South by Southwest for Women in Tech. And so the whole board looks at me and says, well, you're the connection engineer. Why don't you make it happen? So I thought about it. I'm like, this is my reinvention. I'm at the right place at the right time, and it's right now. It just took me 20 years to get here, but I'm the one to do this. And so I literally announced it to a group of about 100 people, and I said, we're going to do Seattle's largest Women in Tech event. And I stood at the back of the room at the end of that with my hands out, and people stood in line again and handed me cards that said, I'm from HBO, I'd like to sponsor this. I'm from T-Mobile, I'd like to sponsor this. I just graduated from UX school, I'd like to be on your team. And I walked out of that night, and then the next morning, Expedia calls me and says, I heard about your event, I'd like to sponsor it. I've never had this kind of community support in the 20 years of business. So I'm like, I'm all about women in tech right now. This is my new life, and I'm the right person to do this. I love women entrepreneurs, and I've been supporting them for years, but right now women in tech need me because most women in tech and people in tech are introverts. And what I love to do is help people create relationships. So I designed a different kind of an event where people would create relationships. In fact, I created a hashtag called Relationships Are the True Currency. I had 700 people show up to that event, and I stopped everything I was doing and said, I'm going to do like the next startup week for women in tech. And I'm going to have a whole week-long event next year. I'm going to do it in Vancouver because everything I do in Seattle, I take to Vancouver because I can drive there in 3 hours, and then I take it to Amsterdam next. And so secretly, I was going to bring it here. And I, once again, it was just exciting, just taking baby steps and all the things that were happening. This last April, we threw it in Seattle, and 1,000 people came, and I got the support of all of the big ones. So it's so exciting to be here. Last year, I came to this event, and I sat right there. And we came for 18 days last year. It was Halloween, and I was on a mission, the secret mission that I'm going to make this happen. And so for 18 days, I went to every Women in Tech event, every professional women event. I Googled women influencers in tech, and then I threw a party, and I invited people and said, I'm putting on Amsterdam's largest Women in Tech event next year. Are you in? And I walked out of this city last year with a buy-in like I couldn't believe. And I've been working on it for the last year. And coming full circle, it just feels amazing to be here. It's so surreal to be here, to be able to tell you my story in Amsterdam, that in 12 days I'm putting on this event, the Women in Tech Regatta here. Thank you. So I'd love to leave you with 4 takeaways. 1, know who you are. Dig deep. Figure out who you are. Do whatever it takes. Go to classes. Talk to your friends. Ask me how I did the 100 Things You Crave list. Make a Pinterest board. Figure out who you are and spend 100% of your time doing that. Pronto. 2, live 24 hours at a time. That's all we got anyway. You know, you wake up one day, you're not having a good day. Tomorrow something's going to change. Just know that life's a game. Just keep moving on. In 24 hours, everything changes. 3, be vulnerable. Tell your stories. Add marshmallows. 4, get some friends. Know the value of friends. Relationships are the true currency. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melody. Thank you so much. Believe in the power of friendship. I'm all into that. So, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, you didn't prep me for this.
You didn't ask.
Keep it simple. Simple, sexy.
Ooh la la. Mm-hmm. Who's got a question? Oh my God, so many hands in the air. I can't believe it. Oh my God, there's too many hands. I can't battle through them all. Who's got a question? Oh, madam. What's your name and where'd you come from?
Hi.
Oh, hi.
Okay, so my name is Christina. I come from Romania, and I moved a few months ago to Amsterdam. And I'm so happy to be here and to hear a story.
What's your question, love?
My question is, do you think this craving for creating businesses and being ambitious is something that came from your childhood and the way you were brought up, or you just naturally had it? Or where do you think it came from?
I mean, I grew up with entrepreneurs. This helped a lot, but definitely I didn't know any different. It was just in my blood. So, but I do see so many people that quit their jobs and change their lifestyles and really figure out who they are and spend all their time doing what they love. So I think it goes both ways. For me, it was in my blood when I was born, for sure.
One last question, because we really have to crack on.
Okay.
And it's, who's inspired you in your life?
My husband. He's right up there.
Hello, husband.
We've been together for 30 years. He inspires me every day. Love you, babe.
And for those who would like to attend the Women in Tech Regatta, and you can be of any sexual denomination, we have a special offer and a special that's hard to say, a special SheSays code, a special code for SheSays attendees. Let's put it that way. If you go to the site and you use the code SheSays, you receive a discount which brings your ticket all the way down to only €95. And that's almost half price. When I say half price, I'm exaggerating, but it's almost half price. So, Melody, thank you so much for your time.
Well,